Howdy, folks. Welcome to Redneck Gone Green. I'm David Cobb. I am the redneck. You bet I've gone green, and I'm trying to convince you to do it too. And as a reminder on this show, when we talk about going green, we're not talking about mere environmentalism. We're talking about deep ecology, a recognition of the interconnectedness of all of life. And whether you come at that from a deeply eco-spiritual feminist perspective, or you come at it from a hard science perspective, or like me, you say both of those are completely rational, reasonable ways of understanding the world. The fact of the matter is this: we are all connected in this dance and web of life. Whatever we do to that web of life, we are ultimately doing to ourselves. And the fact of the matter is, we doing it wrong. We are literally destroying Mother Earth faster than she can replenish herself, creating a racist, sexist, and class oppressive society with the plunder and the pillage. And if we don't stop them, the predatory class and the insane people who are in control of the global political economy are going to destroy this planet. And on that cheery note, let's bring in co-host Shane Knight.
How you doing, David? Good to see you.
Look at here. I know something, and I'm going to share it with everybody else, y'all. It is Shane Knight's birthday, isn't it, Shane?
It is. It's been a good day so far, and I hope to end it very well, too.
Well, I do, too. And on that note, I want to share with you, Shane, you and I got a lot in common. You know, we both got a family deep in Mississippi. Mine straddles Louisiana and Mississippi, you in Mississippi. We both come out of poverty, rural poverty in the South. And I know that we both have both Scottish and Irish ancestry. So I want to share this with you. My mama taught it to me. It's my favorite birthday wish. I'm going to wish it for you. You ready?
I am.
May you live as long as you want to, and want to as long as you live.
I love it.
Isn't that wonderful? Mama used to say that was an old Irish saying, and I used to joke that it must be true. She was an old Irish lady, so she would know.
Hell, that's great. I love that. Somebody had told me that it's like years ago. I guess I was living in Dallas at the time. Anyway, but thank you.
You're welcome.
Lovely lovely to be here with you doing this today on my birthday.
Well, I'm honored to be with you on your birthday, and let's just jump right into it, Shane, because we got a great guest. But I also want to take advantage, just as we always do, just a couple of things that are on my mind last week. I mean, man, like decades are happening in the weeks in between our shows, right? So First of all, happy Pride.
That's right. We had such a good turnout yesterday in New York City. It was a little bit warmer than I think people wanted it to be, but they were ecstatic, and the celebration was glorious. I got to walk through. We didn't get to go to the full-on parade, but we walked through Pride Fest yesterday and got to see a couple of friends over there. I went and had dinner last night. Had a good time, and everybody seemed to be jubilant, and there was no disruption. So I was very pleased.
Right on. And I don't know if you caught it, Shane. Budapest tried to cancel Pride.
They did. They banned it, right? They wanted to ban the whole thing.
They attempted to ban it,
and they still had over 100,000 people show up and do it anyway. Half protest, half celebration, like it's supposed to be.
That's right. Stonewall lives, and as the younger folks have taught me to say, remember, Stonewall was a riot.
Yeah, that's right. A lot of people just forget about it. They think it's
by trans people of color, by the way.
Yeah. And look who's probably going to have to lead the fight again.
It looks like it. Speaking of, yet another thing happened, which was both protest and celebration. Our boys Kneecap. I know that we've talked about Kneecap a little bit here. Did you see at the Glastonbury Festival, the single largest festival in all of the UK, the BBC cut the feed trying to prevent Kneecap from even being broadcast because they have been clear and unequivocal in their condemnation of the genocide happening in Palestine. And instead, the entire crowd began chanting from the just free Palestine, I think was the chant that just and it blew up virally. And then Bob Dylan, the next punk rock / rap artist that came on, took up a chant. Like, I'm just telling you, the growing opposition at the grassroots level to this genocide is stunning to me, and the ruling elite have completely lost control of the narrative. So,
well, they're doing what stupid does. They're doing what stupid does. I saw today that Marco Rubio came out and said he was going to rescind Bob Dylan's visa.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. Keep going.
Yeah.
You're going to wind up in an isolated dump full of stupid people.
No, well, and here we come. And speaking of stupid, also in the last week, we teetered on World War III.
That was scary. I'm
gonna be honest. I was really genuinely frightened. And Ben Mansky follows geopolitical politics, so I'll just say, Shane, let's hold that one, because I do want to ask him some questions as an academic and a real strategist and theorist about his thoughts there. But the other thing that I think that is worth pointing out, and just to be clear, Trump was able to strong arm NATO to have virtually the entire budget of the European countries doubled for NATO. And I'll just be very clear, I am no fan of NATO. I am, I'm an actual anti-war activist. I like to say no war but the class war. Now, we have to defend ourselves to be sure, but my read is NATO is very, very seldom actually a defensive posture.
It really is. I do understand it. I don't agree with the whole idea. They've never really been there or done much. But having them raise, what was it? Trump wanted 5% of the GDP to increase.
I think he's going to get it, Shane. And wait, there's more. We've got Trump winning at the Supreme Court. We're watching the abdication of responsibility from the judiciary, but we've got something to celebrate, though.
We do.
What's that, Shane?
And it was almost like a birthday gift for me when I saw that Mandani trounced Andrew Cuomo in the New York City mayoral primary here. It was a real big relief and a slight glimmer of hope. And man, the response to it here has been very unusual from my perspective. I've got several in the community that I live in. There's a lot of progressives, a lot of leftists, and I couldn't tell you the number of people that I was surprised to hear say, well, he was the last one on my list. Anybody but him.
Well, I want to hear more about that. By the way,
maybe
the comment section was lit up with birthday wishes from you, but also you don't like my music just pointed something out, and that is most of NATO's spending will be spent on U.S. military gear.
Yeah.
So thanks for that. You don't like my music.
Yeah. Most people probably don't understand that we dictate the arms that they actually use. They buy bullets from us, and they're changing the ammunition that they used to use, or they still use it, but they're changing the round that is going to be used in the machine guns. So they have to buy all new gear from the United States.
Well, look here. So the point is, Shane, like you and I could just keep going on and on, but we've already touched on several things that I want to get Professor Mansky to talk about. So I'm going to shift gears and actually share with folks that we're going to bring Ben onto this program, but I want to be upfront that Ben is a personal friend of mine. I counted it up. It's over 30 years. He has been a social change agent, but he is also a esteemed scholar activist. And his scholarship has almost always revolved around democracy itself. And he has literally had a lifetime of it, from his childhood in Jerusalem to his involvement as a young person. He has been involved in almost all of the mass mobilizations that have taken place ever since the 1980s. That includes anti-racism work, civil rights, economic justice, environmental work, farm labor, gender equity, immigrant rights. I mean, it really is a ridiculously long social change resume. I do want to say that Ben and I were in the streets of Seattle in November of 1999. He was also one of the leaders of the budding democracy movement that got kicked off around the global justice era. He helped to do democracy teach-ins. He was one of the co-founders of the 180-degree movement for democracy and education, the Liberty Tree Foundation for the Democratic Revolution, Move to Amend, and lots of others. So again, it's a long resume. And with that, I want to bring scholar activist, my personal friend, Ben Mansky, into the program. Ben, can I call you Ben, or do I have to say Professor?
Oh, Ben is good. That's what I tell my students to do, although they're mostly from Virginia. So it takes a few days for them to get used to calling me Ben instead of sir.
Sir. Yeah, sir.
Exactly. So pleasure to join you, and nice to be here with you and with Shane and with everybody else today. And happy birthday, Shane.
Thank you again. And thank you, everybody out there, for your birthday well wishes. I really appreciate it.
So looky here, Ben, because we're going to cut Shane off for birthday celebration, right? We got to be aware of the time. So right up front, I want to let you know I want to get your opinion on the geopolitical, what is happening in this big picture moment. I also want to make sure that we touch on the Mandani election and what that represents. I want to make sure to lift up and talk about the Next System teach-ins and nextsystem.org that you are, I think, founded and directed at George Mason University. So there's lots to talk about. So I'm going to invite you, where would be the best place to begin that conversation? Like big picture universal to specific, or do you want to get specific first?
Well, I'm happy to pick up where you guys were leaving off there in terms of what's going on at this moment. And then let's go to the sort of the longer term and the bigger picture and what we've got to do, what the task is ahead of us. So that sounds good to me.
All right, well, let's hit it then. To me, the Mandani election is the one that is the most on my mind, Ben. And I'm going to ask you, like, you and I haven't even had a chance to debrief that. So yeah, I've already been pretty clear that I think that this is nothing but good for the left. Mm-hmm. I've gotten a little pushback, but I'm curious how you feel about what you saw. What's the big picture? And then we'll chop it up.
Yeah, I mean, it's a huge win for democratic forces in the United States. No question about that. And I think it's a difficult moment in a sense because there's a lot of celebration. It's earned celebration. There's a sense of opportunity, and there's some confidence that comes out of what happened with the primary election for people in the union movement who have been at the front lines of pushing this forward. People in Democratic Socialists of America, people in community organizations who really made this win possible with the mix of those forces coming together with a singular individual. That it does make a difference for those who have worked on managing campaigns. You know that the candidate does matter quite a bit, and have created this opportunity. So what makes it difficult is that you want to celebrate, you want to recognize what has happened, what has just happened, but it's also necessary to deal with the gravity of the moment, which is to say that they will be fighting against Mandani every day between now and the general election. And what happened with the primary election for the Democratic Party is not by any means the end of the story for this particular election cycle. So nobody should take for granted that because he's the Democratic nominee that he will win the general election, in my view. And I don't think people are taking that for granted. And then beyond that, looking down the road, say he wins. And I think it's a reasonable expectation that he could and should win this general election. They will be fighting him tooth and nail from the moment in which he wins the general election. So it's going to be, as Frederick Douglass said, a constant struggle. And I think we can know that not only looking at the particulars of the case in New York City, but we can also know that from all the other cases in the last 30 years in which you've had independent, progressive or socialist or green or some mix of those candidates break through and win state power at the local level on behalf of social movements, and then have been fought tooth and nail from the moment in which they secured that victory by a coalition of parts of the center and of the right, which is to say, two sections of capital, allying against, the people's movements. And as you know, and some people who are here with us today know, I grew up most of my life in Wisconsin, and we experienced that in Madison, Wisconsin, day in and day out throughout the late 1990s and into the 2000s, where the coalition of the Progressive Party and the Green Party was such that we were actually the #1 party for a period of time, and have long been the #2 party. And that's part of my history before I became an academic scholar. I was very much involved with that. And we had the Chamber of Commerce uniting with what at that time was the Democratic Party in Madison and the Republican Party against us. We saw it much more recently in Buffalo, New York, with again the DSA candidate. India won the primary and then was taken down in the general election by the same kind of coalition. We've seen it in the politics of the Bay Area over the years. So this is a big advance, but it's not anywhere close to over yet. And the good news, I would say, is that the struggle that is emerging in New York City, I think, is going to continue to widen and deepen the popular movement in New York, so that people may well be ready for the opportunity that they're creating for themselves.
So, Ben, thank you so much. That was a brilliant frame, if I do say so myself. I want to start with where I have absolute agreement with you, and that is, this is nothing but positive for us. And that is to say, whether you think of yourself as on the left or progressive or just on the side of the people against capital, this is a win-win, because that breakthrough really did come as a result of social movements cohering. You and I have been at this for a long time, Ben, and the progressives and the left often talk about bringing environmentalist and racial justice and anti-imperialist and women's issues, like, bringing these movements together. And that's really hard to do. And my read is that's what we saw happen in New York City. This was, in fact, a movement win. And it was a movement that was led both by organized labor, yes, to DSA, but community-based organizations, anti-imperialist. Very clearly, the genocide in Palestine was a driving force. And interesting to see that it looks like the exit polling shows that he won the Jewish vote in New York City, which, I think
shouldn't surprise anybody who knows American Jews and who has paid any attention, and of course almost everybody on the left in some way knows American Jews, like me, even if you don't know it, you know us. But also, if you pay any attention to the way in which Jews in the United States vote and the history of Jewish activism in the 20th and 21st century, that shouldn't have been a surprise.
I just want to stop. It wasn't a surprise to me, Ben. But the point I'm making is it pulled the veil back from the lie that the corporate media had been telling, and that AIPAC, in an attempt to claim to be speaking for the Jewish community. That's what I think is really very powerful. It demonstrated what you, I, and anybody who's in the movement already knows, and that is Jewish Voices for Peace are way more representative of American Jewry than is AIPAC, for example.
Yeah, certainly.
So that's the point I was making.
Yeah.
And I also want to point out that when I say this is a win-win, not only did the breakthrough happen, so either a Democratic Socialist is actually mayor of arguably the most important city in the entire United States, or it means that the Democratic Party and its operatives and the neoliberals are going to have to engage in a level of corruption and chicanery to expose themselves for what they really are. Because there's no way Mandani does not win this election unless the Democratic Party engages in a level of corruption and chicanery. It'll make it what happened to India Walton a walk in the park. What happened to her in Buffalo. That's my assessment, Ben.
Yeah, and I think we don't know what's going to happen in terms of the struggle among Democrats, in terms of how the Democratic Party relates to this candidacy. And as you and some other people here know, I grew up in the Democratic Party, but I left the Democratic Party in 1992, and I've been a member of the Greens since then. But I don't see the Democratic Party as one thing. If it was one thing, it would be an easier task for those people who think that they can reform the Democratic Party. There would be a single thing to reform, but really it's a whole series of institutions and a constellation of actors. And there's the base and there's the establishment, but there's also power players in different parts of the country. So I think what we're going to see, I think you're absolutely right, in the course of this campaign is heightening distinctions among Democrats, and people are going to have to decide whether they're going to rise to the occasion to defend the idea of democracy within the Democratic Party, even if that hasn't been the practice in many, or if perhaps most cases. And so I don't know where that's going to end up in this case, but I agree with you that it's going to be very clarifying.
Yep, exactly. And so, Ben, another frequent viewer, listener, and commenter actually asked an important question. Patricia says, I wonder, however, how much of his win is due to A, ranked choice voting, and B, cross endorsement by the third runner-up. And the name is actually Brad Lander, who's the New York City comptroller, who got 11% of the first round vote. So as an academic, I'm going to invite you to kind of react to that, and then I'll share my thoughts.
Sure. Well, actually, I can't speak to this as an academic because I study the things I study empirically, and the things that I deal with are I don't study elections so much. But as somebody who's a former campaign manager, a presidential campaign manager, a campaign manager for scores of local elections, and who's been really involved in electoral politics in the past, I have an opinion that I think is well informed. So what I'd say is it's always the case that there's some series of factors or a set of conditions that come together to determine the outcome of an election. So we could say, well, but for ranked choice voting and the fact that parts of the movement came together in a significant way in New York City, maybe he wouldn't have squeaked out this victory. But it wasn't a squeaker. First of all, let's recognize getting over 40% of the vote in an election, which I think there were 12 people on the ballot, if I'm not mistaken, but many 6 or 7 major candidates in New York City is not a small feat. That's a big deal. And in fact, if they hadn't had ranked choice voting, he would have won outright because he would have won on a plurality. So I think we do need to look to ranked choice voting and what it does for building coalitions. Ranked choice voting allows for people who have some disagreements on important issues to come together and to build a larger coalition, which is, of course, why so many people in the Green Party over many years have pushed for ranked choice voting and proportional representation. And I think this is a place where, as weak as the Greens are at this moment, the Greens can take some, can feel good about contributing ranked choice voting to many jurisdictions in the United States. So it made a difference. It made a difference, and there's always something that makes a difference, and we should recognize.
And thank you for that, because we never know what's going to make the difference, which is part of the reason why I continue to say, even with the Green Party being as weak as it is, the fact that, and I'm going to say we exist, since I'm a registered Green to this day. I spend very little of my time, as you know, Ben, on electoral politics, traditional electoral politics. I do more solidarity, economy, and movement work these days. But remember, folks, like, this system does not merely exist to prevent the Greens or socialists from winning elections. The system is designed to prevent our very existence. And the fact that we still exist is a victory in and of itself. Before we move on from Mandani, though, I really want to bring up Michael Nugent's comment. Michael is also a good friend of this program, contributes a lot. This is, I think, very important. He says, no, we're not a monolith, though the fact remains that Mandani did not carry the Black vote, and a number of Black activists are critical of his lack of addressing Black needs specifically. And in New York City, like, it's a big deal generally. The Black community Black voters have always been the very base, the most consistent base, really, for the Democratic Party. What do you make of this?
Well, I think this is in part what I was referring to earlier when I said that the process of building and deepening the coalition is got to continue, and there's more work to be done between now and Election Day. So part of the way in which you deal with the attacks which have been coming and which will continue to come on his campaign and his candidacy is to respond and to punch back, when they're punching down, to punch up. But the other thing you have to do is you have to continue to build the coalition, and that means doing the relational work that needs to continue to be done. And I think this is one area where that work is happening. I think another one is within the union movement, where a lot of people in the union movement, maybe it's not so much for Mandani's campaign to do it, but it's really for people within the union movement in New York City to say, hey, we've got to, to those unions that decided to go with machine politics rather than popular politics, to take that on as well. So I have never done any serious organizing in New York City, so I don't know the lay of the land there. But I can tell you that if you look at some of these other cases that I referenced, Black candidates, generally speaking, have been candidates in major cities that have been most successful in leading these kinds of coalitions. There's a lot of chest beating and happiness about having a socialist nominee for the Democratic Party in New York City right now. But let's recognize that Brandon Johnson, despite the fact that he's also come under a lot of criticism, is also somebody who is a DSA-backed mayor in Chicago and has been putting forward a lot of the same kinds of initiatives, like city-owned grocery stores, building the solidarity economy, community wealth building. And so there are a number of other places around the country right now. We also we see similar kinds of debates and discussions around Karen Bass in Los Angeles, but there's no question that LA is also under attack. So there's a need for us to not look at Mandani's campaign in isolation, but to see what there is to be learned from other major cities and smaller cities around the country. And I'm sure I sure hope people in New York City are taking a look at these other cases and taking lessons too, and continuing.
And Michael, thank you for your comment, because I remember recently Rashad Robinson. Ben, you may remember Rashad. We worked with at Fair Vote on ranked choice voting. Actually, he was formerly with Color of Change. He specifically pointed out that as a Muslim progressive, that Mandani actually has an opportunity to engage very deeply with Black media and community groups, and was really, I think, offering some constructive critique on how to move forward, how to listen to and work alongside existing community leaders and focus more on issues that are resonating specifically with Black voters. So again, as you say, there's still work to do. And it is my hope that we'll see that coalition, a true rainbow coalition, be able to address those very real, very important concerns in order to keep the coalition together. Yeah.
Amen to that.
So look at here again, I think it's super exciting. And it also, I think, invites us to talk about the next system project that you're working on, because too often folks look at elections, right, and are using elections alone as sort of the gauge on what's happening within the movement. I know you have, as a candidate and as a campaign manager, has spent a lot of time in elections, but you've also been a you engaged personally in direct action. I don't think I'm outing you. It's part of that.
I tell people that all the time. Yeah.
Right. So you've engaged in direct action. You've also engaged in demonstrations and lobbying efforts. I mean, you've really used all the tools in the toolbox, and you also have been sort of looking at what are the arcs and you've talked about a democratic turn. So I'm going to give you all the space you need, because I want you to make the case for why you think the time is right to actually make an advance for a new system.
Yeah, absolutely. So the time is right, and the time is very urgent for making that advance right now. We are clearly in a period of transition from one kind of world system to another. We have seen that I think 10 years ago, when the Next System project was first launched, there was a question about whether we could provoke a kind of debate about the next system, about whether we were in a time of system change, and more importantly, about what kind of next system it might be that we would want, and how we could get there. But I think today, 10 years later, going on 10 years, there's very little debate about the fact that we are in a time of transition from one kind of system to another. We can see it all around us. We have the effects of 40 years of neoliberal austerity policies that have immiserated much of the global north and most of the global south. We have the impacts of that. We have the climate crisis that is intensifying and is hitting people all over the country and all around the world. We have mass migration and climate wars that have also intensified over the last 10 years. So I'll just say experientially, I don't have to convince people that we are in a time in which the old system is the pace at which it's collapsing is speeding up. Something else is coming. And so then the question becomes, as I said earlier, what kind of next system do we want? There will be some other kind of new equilibrium, as the economists would say. There will be some kind of new system that will emerge in our lifetimes. Things tend to stabilize after a period of disruption and chaos. And so, there are different alternatives there. And I think for many of us, I would argue for the vast majority of people around the world, there are some common values that we share about the kind of society that we might want to live in. We want to live in a society in which everybody can flourish, they can become their best selves. We want to live in a society in which people share in power, which you could call that democracy. We want to live in a society that is just, which is to say fair. And we want to live in a society that is sustainable, that can actually maintain itself, in which we're not dealing with insecurity of this kind all the time. And so if those are the kinds of values that we think that most people share when you get down to it, then the challenge becomes, figuring out what kind of system could produce those things. What sets of conditions, how do we organize things so that we can have a society that produces those things: democracy, justice, sustainability. And that's what next system studies in universities is about. This is a new field that many of us have been working to build over the last 5 years, especially. And you can go to nextsystem.org. And that's also what so many people around the world, whether they call it next system work or they are operating under some other kind of framework, whether it's abolition or whether it's just transition or whether it's solidarity economics. There's so many different ways in which people are struggling with the question of how do we build a system that is the kind of system that we actually want. So what I want to invite people who are here to do is to take a look at nextsystem.org and a particular process. There's lots of work that's going on around the Next System framework, but a particular process called the Next System teach-ins.
So before you do that, Ben, because this is an important distinction that you've made. Because folks, for those who read the Substack and about Ben, you saw me focus my writing on his work at Next System Studies, right? Mm-hmm. So that's at George Mason. It is a rigorous academic approach to what that means and how to do it. And it does remind me of one of the folks that you introduced me to, Ben, that greatly influenced my thinking. Gar Alperovitz basically said, look, systems change is coming. The question is, what kind of system do we want and how do we get there? And so the Next System Studies is an academic approach framework to study social movements and hopefully, I think, to be valuable to social movement practitioners. But there is an entire other framework that is parallel to it that is called the Next System teach-ins. So I just wanted folks to understand that there is, yes, Next System Studies, but what Ben is about to talk about is something that goes beyond academics. Yes, there are academics involved, but this really obliterates the old town gown sort of divide between campuses and community organizations. So I just wanted to frame it that way, Ben, before you got into the Next System teach-ins.
Yeah, you bet. And I should just say, in terms of Next System Studies, we have a program in Next System Studies at George Mason University, which is a public university in Virginia. But there are other places where people are starting Next System Studies programs as well. University of Vermont, University of Minnesota. There's a lot of people who are networked internationally, all of whom are academics, but they're all academics who are practitioners as well, right? So when you're talking about obliterating the town gown divide, these are all people who are very much involved, with their boots deep in the mud in terms of building next systems and studying the work of building new systems as they're doing it. So we're building up next system studies internationally. But the next system teach-ins, as you point out, is a kind of collaboration between people who are working on building next system studies in universities and colleges, and increasingly high schools too, and people who are working outside of academia, who are doing next system work in communities, in unions, in different institutions and settings. And so what the next system teach-ins are is a series of just that, teach-ins that will take place November 1st through the 15th, all over the world at the same time. So the idea is we don't all go to the same place. We're not logging into an online meeting somewhere. We are actually holding teach-ins on our campuses, in our union halls, in our community centers, in our faith buildings, or synagogues, or churches, our mosques, our community centers, whatever kind of site makes sense for us, in which we are doing the work of reaching out to lots and lots of people in our community, in our campus community, in our regional community, to talk with them about the real alternatives to the current system, the real alternatives to global capitalism that people have been building up either over generations or just over the last few years, alternatives to Amazon's. We have platform capitalism. Lots of people are building up platform cooperatives in different parts of the world. Instead of having a capitalist institution own and operate our data and own and operate the way in which we buy and sell and exchange things, we can own it ourselves. Workers can own it, communities can own it, we can own it together, right? So that's happening in many places around the world. People are building up systems of worker cooperatives, community cooperatives, public ownership, community land trusts, all kinds of forms of economic and community democracy that are integrated generally on a regional level. So basically the opportunity for the next system teach-ins is to bring all the practical work and the lessons from all these different cases, all these different places around the world, to our neighbors, our coworkers, our students, our colleagues, and to talk about how we can further that kind of work where we are. So imagine maybe it's 20, maybe it's 40, maybe it's 100 teach-ins taking place at the same time in those first 2 weeks in November. And that will make a real big difference for people at each site. So if you organize a teach-in where you are, that's going to help you to build relationships, to build knowledge that is going to be meaningful for you, but in terms of building relationships on campus, but also to build relationships between communities and the local campuses. Very important. And it will lay foundations for work internationally, because the people who are involved in organizing teach-ins are talking with each other. We're meeting all the time on a weekly basis now. There's folks in Sao Paulo and Cape Town, lots of people across the United States and Canada, people in Western Europe who are in India, people who are talking with each other. And that's an important process for building a field that we call next system studies, which is important. We got to enlist the resources, the knowledge, the commitments of people in higher education to continue to help to build the alternatives, right, internationally. But also, it's also a movement building process. And so check out nextsystem.org. And I hope lots of people who are tuned in today will become part of that if you're not already.
So Ben, there's been a lot of fantastic conversation in the comment section, so we weren't able to sort of follow all of it. But I do want to point out that at nextsystem.org, there are tremendous resources that are available. So folks, Shane and I often talk about how the fact that we are hoping to go beyond just sort of the ain't it awful diatribe, and even beyond the cheerleading the victories. Although I want to cheerlead victories, I also want to have good constructive critique. But I do that, and I study, like you, Ben, I often say, like, I study history and social movements not to be a good movement trivial pursuit player. I study because I want to win a new world. And I have been very impressed by the group that you have put together to anchor this, and the very concrete tools that you are making available to folks. So I'm going to invite you to walk us through some of those resources and how people can access them, and how they can access some support and help from that network of folks that you have described.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad you brought that forward. And there's going to be even more that comes online pretty soon. We're putting together an organizing guide that should be out in just a few weeks, less than 2 weeks from now. Basically, there are video resources. There's descriptions of the history of teach-ins, of what a teach-in is. A teach-in is not just like a panel or a session that you want to jazz up, and so you call it a teach-in, so people will think it's cool. But organizing a true teach-in is a particular kind of task. So there's information that you'll find under resources at nextsystem.org that will be helpful to you, and the organizing guide that our good friend Sarin Mudliar is putting together will be even more helpful. We have a pretty simple way to get involved. If you register anywhere on that website, one of the things that will happen is you'll have the opportunity to indicate that you'd like somebody to follow up with you. And if that happens, you will get a follow-up from Gabriel Gonzalez or from others who are members of our team. We're going to start holding weekly office hours so that people can come in and drop in and meet with somebody live to talk about how to organize a teach-in. And even if you don't think you're going to end up organizing a teach-in, you should register just so that you get in the loop. You'll get the Next System Tribune, which is a quarterly publication that comes online. You'll get follow-ups because the teach-ins are a step along the way. They're part of a larger process, but there are also online gatherings. For example, there will be a Next System Convergence that will be September 4th and 6th. 5th and 6th, I believe, of this year, and you'll get notices about that. So we're putting in place more and more ways to support people plugging in. And I have to say, there's nothing worse than being interested in something and wanting to get involved and to figure out how you can lend your hand, put your back to the oar, and then have nobody follow up with you. And we're doing our best to make sure that everybody has a way to contribute as best as you can. So that's nextsystem.org. I'll also say for those people who are in academia, who may be faculty or staff or students, or who work closely with people in higher education, take a look at our model program for Next System Studies at George Mason University. That's nextsystem.gmu.edu. And you can get a sense of the way that we've been building this program. There are a lot of lessons. We're about 4 years in at this point that we've taken from that. And we're always happy to follow up with you and talk with you about how you can build Next System Studies where you are.
Fantastic. Shane, you had a thought that you wanted to interject.
Yeah, we talk so much about the different systems and places, or systems and things that we can start doing now to help transition away from capitalism to something better. And I'm wondering too, like, one of the things that keeps rolling around in the back of my head, especially as of late, as it's a growing concern. I think one of our viewers even commented about it. The concept of, I think who was it, Yanis Varoufakis that was talking? Yeah, there you go. Thank you. Techno-feudalists. I'm wondering what, if any at all, consideration do you put behind the role of AI in thinking for like next step thinking? Because that's a big player right now, and it's the race to control that is just as important as racing to control whatever the next system is going to be. At least in my opinion.
Technology is embedded in every part of our lives, and even those people who might be living in a tent somewhere and not aware that Redneck Gone Green exists are affected by it. It permeates everything. I would say there's lots of kinds of next system work that people are doing around the world. So the work that I'm personally doing and that people I work with most closely at George Mason University are doing is not the be all and end all for next system work, but we are putting a lot of time and energy into the question of digital technology in particular. So one of our 3 engaged research and action programs at George Mason University is called the Digital Commonwealth Project. And it is both a research and an action project. We are studying the alternatives to platform capitalism and surveillance capitalism that are being built and that are really afoot, and they're active in the world, in different parts of the world. But we are also working with our partners in the DMV, which is to say DC, Maryland, Virginia area, and especially in Northern Virginia, to build a system of tools that we can use to build an economic democracy, political democracy, to to really build the next system regionally. And we call that system a digital commonwealth. That's a vision for a way to integrate digital technology that is designed by we the people, by communities working together with institutions to serve our needs to govern ourselves. And pretty soon, just as soon as we get done with editorial, but this got through peer review, there will be an article that we'll be putting out that will be open access, which means that it will be, you don't have to pay for it. Everybody who's here will be able to access it. That myself and Dhruv Deepak, who is a doctoral student in our program, will have published. That's on the digital commonwealth. And basically the long and the short of it is, that is absolutely possible for us to do participatory planning, to engage in constitutional change, to stabilize mutual aid, to build supply chains outside of the formal capitalist economy, to engage in participatory governance, not just participatory planning, using digital technology, and to, in some ways, get beyond some of the old debates on the left about sort of how to engage with the state. We can build economic and political democracy using digital technology. And we're convinced that we can do that. And we're just trying to figure out how. So that's what that's about. Yeah.
I'm so glad you did that, because you merged the ideas of, it's not just like we've been talking broadly about democracy and the need for a democracy movement. And then when Shane brings up artificial intelligence, which I think is absolutely right. We know that automation, robotics, technology itself, and artificial intelligence is just the latest version of that level of automation. And to me, if we democratize not only the access to that, but really the understanding of how it works, reduce the barriers to entry, promoting use, ownership, of that, we could literally be living in paradise. We could be using these to facilitate a level of genuine power sharing and power with that folks before us could only dream about. Like this, like we are at a point where we could literally be ushering in a new era where everybody has enough. I mean, this is what's so both exciting and maddening to me.
Maddening is the word. Maddening is the word. It's maddening because it's so unnecessary. It's so unnecessary that the pain and suffering that so many people are experiencing right now, because we really do, for the first time in human history, have all the tools we need to provide for everybody. And so let's figure out how we can marshal those tools and make it happen.
Well, looky here, Ben. I mean, I want to continue this conversation, but we've already talked about how this is Shane Knight's birthday. We're not going to keep him on longer, right? So as fascinating as this conversation is, I do want to give you an opportunity for some closing thoughts, an invitation. I will say you got a lot of love from people who knew you from back in your corporate charter revocation days, your work in the mining fights of Wisconsin back in the day. So I wish that we would have been able to pull out a lot of those comments, but I am just going to give you the closing thoughts for our program.
Yeah, well, I mean, I would say that there are tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of people around the world who are struggling day in and day out with that old question of what then must we do? And that means that there's a lot of knowledge that is being created all the time, and that has also been accrued over generations, but also in the lifetimes of those of us who are still walking the earth right now. And so that is a great resource. That's our greatest resource in terms of navigating this period of system change and building a different kind of system. So I think we need to recognize that there is a lot more that we know than we know, and that when I say that we know collectively, and that there's knowledge in all parts of society, and that includes, I'll just say, now that I'm in this position of being a university professor, which I have been for 5 years. At this point, that includes within academia. So I'll just speak to that directly. I'd love to talk about mining and finding mining companies and relationship between direct action and elections and all kinds of things that we could talk about. But as an academic, what I'll say is that there are more people who are at universities and colleges within the broader movement than I think is oftentimes acknowledged. When we were down in Atlanta for the Resist and Build in-person meeting, there were tons of faculty members from different institutions who are knee-deep in building the solidarity economy. And so I think we just need to recognize that the struggle is within higher education, as it is within other sectors of society. Certainly, if you look at what the Trump administration has been doing, just like Orban and Putin and Netanyahu, and I could go on and on in terms of the various wannabe and actual strong men around the world. They're going after higher education for a reason. So it is one struggle, and we all have different things we bring to that struggle. There's different struggles that we have in our daily lives. There are different capacities we have. And I want to encourage people to not think of universities and colleges as a monolith, just like I, as somebody who is not inside of the Democratic Party, do not think of the Democrats as a monolith, but to find the relationships and build the relationships with people within higher education if you're not inside of higher education right now, and to recognize that there's in particular, a real opportunity to build a strategy around uniting universities and colleges, municipalities and communities, something that we're increasingly calling the uni-muni community strategy, that can really build an incredible amount of strength and resilience in place, and that could lay the foundations for not only the social movement of the 21st century, but also the foundation for the next system itself. Unions have an important role to play in that. Community groups have a very important role to play in that. And we need student organizations as well. We all need to invest in student organizing too. So I have a lot of confidence about the future, despite the fact that I also live the nightmare daily, just like so many other people here. And I'm just pleased to be here with you.
Well, Ben Mansky, Professor Ben Mansky from George Mason University, thank you so much for joining us. Ben, take good care of yourself. I'm going to pledge to this in front of you, in front of this entire audience. We're going to do a next system teach-in at Cal Poly Humboldt, where I'm at. And Shane, I'm going to invite you to find some place in New York City to do it, because I know a couple of universities there that are just probably already involved, but if not, they should be.
Well, if they're not, I'll find them and put them together.
Well, look here, Ben. Thank you so much. Shane, I know it's your birthday. I want to just say I am really excited to say that our next program, you're going to be hosting it on your own, ain't you?
I will, because you're going to be on the other side of this marble we live on, talking to some folks. I don't even know what it was.
They are associated with Yanis Varoufakis. That's right. It is fair to say that you can say that I'm. And April writes in to say teach-ins everywhere. Let's do this. I'm with you, April. I'll be in Greece. We're going to be meeting with some folks there that are literally doing some of that digital fabrication, trying to democratize that technology. Very excited about that. And next week, our guest is going to be Mike Ferner. Mike is a longtime social change agent and peace activist. He's a former city council member in Toledo, Ohio. He was also the former president of Veterans for Peace. He was a Vietnam veteran himself, saw firsthand the horrors and the ravages of war. He just came off of a hunger strike in support of the people of Palestine. He's going to be a fantastic guest. He's a personal friend of mine. I worked with him at the program on corporations, law, and democracy. So I am going to be watching that program recorded, which gives me a reminder to everyone. Remember, even if you weren't watching live, if you're hearing this for the first time, either on the audio that Shane makes or watching the video that Shane does, we know we get somewhere between 3,000 and 5,000 views on YouTube alone. That's because people like you are engaging the program. So like, comment, subscribe to us at Redneck Gone Green on the Substack. Remember, we do a weekly writing and we do this show weekly on YouTube and we make it into a podcast. The reality is, y'all, this community is growing. It's getting larger, stronger, and better organized. I want to invite you to join us and help make this world a better place so that we can have the world that we so desperately need and so richly deserve. Peace, y'all.